Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's edition of the program, we'll be focusing on workers in the non-academic staff union of universities. We also have new stories for you. We will be right back.
The leadership of the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, has announced the death of its former General Secretary, Frank Ovie Kokori. In a letter which was jointly signed by the National President of the Union, Williams Aporea, and the General Secretary, Afolabi Olawale, the union described Kokori as a committed and dedicated defender, promoter and fighter for workers' rights as well as democratic rights of citizens. The statement further reflected on the years spent in prison and how he struggled not only for trade unions but fought against military rule in the country. Oil and gas workers, under the auspices of NUPENG, said they mourn the loss of a great labor icon, as well as celebrate his remarkable life, especially his contribution to collective struggles for emancipation of the working people. The national and NUPENG flags across the country are to fly at half-mast in honor of the passing of Kokori.
To this sad news of the death of our icon, the first among the first and the founding members of NUPENG, Comrade Frank Kokori, that he is no more. It came to us as a real shock because even though we realized that he was frail and old, nobody expected it so soon. He's a man we loved so dearly and continue to respect. And we wish, he has lived longer. Not only to the labor movement, even for democracy. He was the man that stood, for the attainment of democracy in this country. And until his last breath stopped, I think he never stopped talking, about the importance of democracy and how we can deepen, our democratic values.
It's the 8th Quadrennial Delegates Conference of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions, NASU. At the conference in Abuja, workers raised concern over rising inflation and called for immediate constitution of a new national minimum wage negotiating committee.
The call for the review of the national minimum wage has become urgent in view of the information given by the Bureau of Statistics in its report for October 2023, which stated that the major contributors to the increase in inflation were food and non-alcoholic beverages. The continued rise in inflation was attributed to removal of petroleum subsidy and the devaluation of the official exchange rate. I therefore call on the President to, as a matter of urgency, constitute a national minimum wage negotiating committee to review the current National Minimum Wage Act.
A former president of NLC, Senator Adams Oshiomhole, stressed the need for unity among workers. He said the labor movement in the country must organize and increase the number of its membership.
Government, we call it revenue, capital, pension funds. It is actually workers' social capital. Workers' social capital to address workers' social capital needs. What are your capital needs? Housing, before any other thing. Make a proper resolution and canvass the NFC that together we must revisit this money that PENCOM is managing. Who is borrowing the money? And what are they doing with it when they borrow? That was not the agreement that we signed. That is displacing the social purpose of that fund. So I ask you not to cry over, be homeless, insist that that money be refocused back to the social purpose of pension.
For workers at this conference, there's a need for policies that would encourage a robust economy to ensure that the poverty rate of workers is reduced to the barest minimum.
The commemoration by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency offered a platform to recognize the significant contributions of Nigerian dock workers to the nation's economy. It shed light on the challenges they face daily, their efforts to enhance port efficiency, and outlined ways to improve workers' health and well-being.
A room must be opened for the conditions of service that will have to provide a contributory pension scheme where the dock workers will contribute and the stakeholders, ship owners, and those people who work for them, including the government agencies like ours.
The contributions of the dock labor, otherwise called as the dock workers, in the Nigerian seaports, which dates back to the colonial days. Like we always say, there's no port without dock workers and port workers, and there is no ship without seafarers.
Why we are celebrating dockers today, we should equally tell the government that the port access road, the green law, has effect on various aspects of maritime industry activity with the wide-ranging negative impact on both vehicular and cargo human movement within and outside ports. On this note, we wish to call on the relevant authority to expedite action in rehabilitating and finding lasting solutions to the bad state of port access road in all our port formations.
A crucial point raised was the insistence on oil and gas terminal operators allowing only approved stevedores on their installations. This measure aims to ensure compliance with relevant international guidelines and conventions.
We encourage the stakeholders to build what we call conditions of service for these dock workers. The conditions of service must come with remunerations, must come with entitlement, must come with pensions and gratuity when they leave their services.
The focus of the dock workers commemoration is to raise awareness about port working conditions and underscore the importance of collective bargaining rights.
Let's first at least appreciate the federal government for that wage award. But the situation is that the wage award is not even enough. Like for somebody like me now, if I have to fuel my vehicle from home to office, in fact, in 2 weeks, that wage award is gone. Now, talking of people that are not fueling their car, the rate of inflation now, especially food prices, is so high. Like a bag of rice is about, how do I call it, 50,000 plus. So if somebody that is having like 3 or 4 children buys a half bag of rice from the wage award, what remains? Not to talk of every other commodity. So we're still appealing to federal government, if it is possible, at least to increase the wage award.
But we want to appreciate the decision of the government to come to term in that regard. However, you could see that since the decision was made, it has not been fully implemented by other levels of government, particularly the state governments. And we want to believe that the government will move forward to ensure the full implementation of the award. What the labor is really looking for is a full decision of the federal government on the issue of minimum wage. Even though we appreciate this, And we want other, especially the state government, also to implement it to the fullest. However, the federal government has only paid just 1 month out of the 6 months they have agreed to pay. In the university system, we have only received 1 month out of the almost 6 months.
Actually, they have committed themselves by paying the first installment. We could call it installment or arrears, which was meant for September. But yet, the Nigerian workers are yet to receive that of October, November, and this is December. So we hope that they will fulfill their promises in respect of the wage. The federal government has constituted a committee in respect of that, and we are still waiting for their report in that regard. The report will come out very, very soon, as President. As promised by Mr. President.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the General Secretary of NASU, Comrade Peters Adeyemi. He brings us up to speed on several challenges workers in the union are faced with, while emphasizing on the need for the federal government to constitute a new national minimum wage committee. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on a successful delegate conference.
We give all the glory to God.
It was really impactful. Personally, a lot of eye-openers and pointers from the realities we faced in the labor sector.
Absolutely.
But very quickly, let's discuss about the theme of the conference. The era of economic crisis, addressing the increasing poverty level of workers. Can you bring us up to speed on why the union actually decided to choose this topic at this particular point in time?
Yeah, basically the reason for that is about the fact that the union came to a conclusion after a whole lot of research and analysis, came to a conclusion that the loss of the Nigerian workers have depreciated considerably in the last couple of years. Not only when the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came to power, the depreciation in the quality of the earnings and the life of an average worker in our country had been on. But it got to a crescendo when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was inaugurated as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on the 29th of May 2023. And he made that pronouncement which seemed to benefit the government and the bourgeois in our society by removing the subsidy. What we have seen since May 29 shows clearly that even the poor and the downtrodden are the ones that have been worst hit by the removal of the subsidy. Two major policies of this administration which made us to adopt that theme is the cost of fueling and the cost of living in Nigeria. Two, it used to be 3 square meal, but even to take one now, it's a problem. And it is difficult for those who live this luxurious life. Government functionary lives, National Assembly member lives. And today, Nigeria is basking in the euphoria of more money that they have saved as a result of the removal of the subsidy. But millions of Nigerians are contending with the highest level of poverty.
There was also this conversation during the conference as regards wage award, what should be tenable. With the several challenges Nigerian workers are faced with, what do you think should be the demand?
When you talk about government intervention, One, the intervention is coming late. This intervention ought to come simultaneously with the pronouncement, which means that this government did not do its homework, because this government took over from a government that was running the place under the same party. So if they have had the plan to remove the subsidy, they ought to also have had a plan as to how to immediately cushion the effect. But that did not happen. So it's a big problem. It's part of what we used to call lack of preparation on the part of politicians when they aspire to office. Because as the president was announcing that removal out of his speech, he would have followed up to say, this removal is taking place with immediate effect, but these measures will follow immediately. That was not done. When you are talking about intervention, it's only coming last month, almost like 4, 5, 6 months after this government has been inaugurated. So clearly, it's something that did not work well. I think there was a deliberate attempt to put Nigerians and Nigerian workers in this suffering before they begin to put up their thinking cap as to how you alleviate the suffering. If you want to remove the subsidy, you know automatically, you are determined, you have campaigned that you are going to remove subsidy. So as you are doing that campaign, you should have put your eggheads in place to also work out what will follow immediately you are removing. Because it's the word of the president is like a military order. The president went out of his speech and just said subsidy is gone. So what follows? What follows immediately? It impacted hardship on Nigerians. And when you talk of 35,000, in an era of this exchange rate, what is 35,000? What does it convert to? What can it buy? Where can it take a worker?
So during the conference, the union unanimously and even other stakeholders in the labor sphere agreed that there should be an immediate constitution of the committee to review the national minimum wage. How would you react to this?
I thought, my feeling is that even the call is late. The call is late. As we speak, there ought to have been a tripartite committee in place working, rather than talking of second quarter. What happens to the first quarter? What happens to the first quarter? Second quarter means we will have to wait till about June. Second quarter will start around April, May, June. So that minimum wage, their tripartite, ought to have been immediately put in place. And then they would have started work, and then a whole lot of other things would have, cost of living index should have been put into consideration before we begin to even talk of wage award and what is not. For me, I think it's unfortunate that this government is dictating the pace about what to give and what not to give. It's not supposed to be so. The government has imposed this hardship. It should be the place of labor to be the one putting the demands. Because government will always talk to you about affordability. The other day I saw the National Security Advisor lamenting that the previous government finished the whole money of the country. But clearly, what have they done? Is it that those who work under Buhari, can they not be arrested and brought to book? Because it's the whole country that is suffering. So for me, honestly, I tell you, without missing word, some things are not done right. Look, even Mr. President himself had to increase the wage award from 25 to 35,000, which means that even the president is aware that the 25,000, which they call palliative or award to cushion the impact of the removal of the subsidy, is grossly inadequate. What is 25,000? And upon all, the state governments, who are the biggest beneficiary from this subsidy removal, have refused to behave. A preponderance of the states have refused to even pay the palliative. The masses who are badly oppressed, we go to those buses and tear them apart. It's a shame what we see presently. So for the palliative, for me, right now government had paid 1 month, second month is not paid. And the workers are agitating, at least my members.
There's a lot of agreements that federal government and various stakeholders have had with NASU over the period of time. There was a conference that NASU held at a time, and the theme of discourse was the need for government to honor collective bargaining agreements. So would you say that the federal government and NASU agreement, which has been ongoing for a while, would you say that there has been conclusion on the prayers that the union have actually had with the federal government?
What the state NSC chairman should do, they know. They know what to do. By now, I expect that, because I read that 1 or 2 states have put their state government on notice. Some are supposed to be on action. By now, I expect state chapters of the NLC to hold their governors and possibly shut down those states. Because the governor is going every month to the federation account something, and they collect money, big money. The problem now with the state is not that they don't have money, is that they don't even know how to spend the money, because the money is now coming in billions. And the workers that are supposed to benefit from this are not benefiting. So if workers in each state are suffering, and the government has money and they are taking more money, then what will the leaders of the NLC be doing? Our chairman and whatever. It's for them to fight. If they are not ready to fight, then they should resign.
Moving forward, you are from the education and associated institution. How would you rate funding of education in the country? How has this impacted on your members, especially with the Japa syndrome, where we have many people leaving the shores of the country to seek greener pasture?
Thank you for that question. In fact, when we met with the Minister of Education, and we had him talk about the fact that this government is committed to funding education. And then when we left, we heard that Mr. President directed that from the internally generated revenue of our tertiary institution, that they should remit to the federal government cover 40% of that. Then we said this government is a joker. Because even when they are not remitting that 40%, the funding is at a dismal level. Dismal level. Let this government do simple arithmetic. What is it that the institutions required to have stability, to be able to comfort to a certain level the students, to provide infrastructure, to ensure that everything at tertiary institution works, for us to be able to produce quality graduates and to stem the tide of japa or whatever you call it, or brain drain. You have to look at the budget presented, the estimate presented by the institutions, and then look at exactly if you can't fund their budget 100%. Take a percentage of what you are releasing. Look at the gap that is left to be bridged. Determine the quantum of the internally generated and put it to the one that you are providing. If you are still not able to meet the budgetary demand, then augment with what remains. So it's the allocation to education as it is now. I don't know what is going to come out. I think there is a bit of improvement in this budget presented to the National Assembly, but clearly it is not yet uhuru. We still need to go further in ensuring that our education is funded adequately. I pity this government because they said they inherit, if I take the words of the National Security Advisor, if I take it seriously, that they inherit a virtually empty covers. But I don't even pity this government, but because they are a continuation of the Buhari government. So they must inherit both asset and liability. That's the truth. They have to find a way of covering what the other people stole if they are not ready to expose them. That's the truth.
Finally, during the conference, youth unemployment seems to be the order of the day according to some of the speakers, and there are lots of concerns towards ensuring that we have more young people in the workspace. There's also the jackpot syndrome, which is the brain drain. How would you say the union is actually reacting to this? As a labor leader, what has been your experience?
I think this government should put in place an employment policy, a robust and workable one, not the jaga-jaga that the Buhari government was doing. Because to even stem the tide of insecurity, you have to engage our youth in whichever way. Because I need to commend this government because they are working on the problem of insecurity. But to further that effort, they must make sure that our youth are engaged. If you leave the millions of Nigerian youths unemployed the way they are, then you can't guarantee security because they can be recruited into anything. So let them have a robust employment policy, which everybody can see, read and write. And then let us also stop deceiving ourselves by giving employment that we clearly know are not employment. That's what we talk about underemployment. You tell people, somebody that you have employed him, you employed a graduate and you are paying him or her 10,000. How will he or she be able to make ends meet? So if you want to create employment, pay those employed well. If you want to assist our unemployed people to be self-employed, that they can also employ people. That a lot of good work is being done by the Bank of Industry on that. So you aid the youth, you aid the unemployment to stand on their own, work on generation of power, so that those who want to go to barbing saloon, hairdressing, and some of these other jobs will have power to do those jobs. And I think if you do that, there's no way government will employ everybody. We will have to look outside government, and then we can get people to be self-employed, and then we'll stem the tide of criminality in our society.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.